Welcome to another Cup of Joe. I'm your host, Joe Tumalo, CEO of Major Plan Giving Development, and back by popular demand is Randy Nyce from Everence Financial. Welcome back, Randy.
Good to see you, Joe. I got my Cup of Joe too. We'll do a chin.
What's that say? You can do it. Is that
Yeah, my coffee gives me encouragement every day. You can do
nice.
it.
Nice.
Some days I need more encouragement than others, but most days.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming back. Had some great feedback on the first one we did together. The emails were just pouring in. Let's get Randy back. That's finally like, all right, we'll get him back. So today's topic is donor advised funds. Now listeners might say, yeah, whatever, dude, or we know about donor advised funds. So what can we tell them that they may not be thinking of about donor advised funds?
Yeah, well, donor advised funds have been getting more and more popular, especially with some of the changes we've had to the tax law, where we've got a lot of givers who are no longer itemizing their taxes. So we've got some of our donors who are using what we call the bunching strategy, where they're pre-funding some of their giving for future years into 1 year, and that's been a real driver in the popularity of donor advised funds in the last couple of years. But donor advised funds have always been a really popular tool to help folks with their giving. The real benefit of a donor advised fund is the donor gets the tax deduction in the year they make the gift. So that's powerful for small business owners who may have a good year and they're saying, hey, we need to offset some dollars this year. And it helps them with their giving strategies as well to be able to say, it's a year we can put some dollars into our donor advised funds for giving in future years where we may have some leaner years. So really good giving and savings account for donors to really be thinking about how do they want to give.
Great.
So there's a bunch of benefits that we have with donor advised funds, which donors love. That it's simple. They can make gifts in and be able to give them out as they would like to. It helps with tax efficiencies. Gifts of appreciated assets into a donor advised fund are a really, really, really powerful thing. For me, for development professionals, I would say the line that I consider for appreciated assets is the line about $5,000. So if you have a donor who's considering making a gift to you and they want to write a check for $5,000, tell them thank you. And next question is, hey, is cash actually the best way to give? If there's some appreciated asset, that can be much more tax efficient. So the rule of thumb is tax is the least efficient way to give. If we have other ways that we can give, it's a benefit both to the donor and to you as an organization.
Great. And so you reminded me of a client or donor working with who wanted to donate real estate, a house.
Yeah.
And we talked about the option of using a donor advised fund. I think it was Fidelity that I spoke to, and they said, yeah, we'll take it on and take a fee, take a small fee and deal with it. And the donor can get all the benefits. Yeah,
for gifts of real estate, we have two options that we typically work with Everence Foundation. Some folks like to use a charitable remainder trust for gifts of real estate, but donor advised funds can be really powerful because we can do a zero tax calculation for them basically and say, so how much of this property should you gift that you can get your tax burden down to zero? And that's a lot of times, somewhere around that 40% mark, 40% of the value of the property. They can drop that, make a gift of that to the foundation. And those dollars, then the proceeds then drop into a donor advised fund that they can give whenever they would like to. It's another way donor advised funds have gained some popularity as an alternative to private foundations. There's some real benefits to that. Of the legal costs of setting it up are very minimal. With private foundations, there's a public reporting requirement. So donors can avoid that. So donors who value the anonymity of their gifts not being published on the IRS website, this is a great tool for them. And private foundations also require an annual 5% payout. from the private foundation, and donor advised funds don't. So it's a little bit of the development community has a little bit of a love-hate relationship with donor advised funds, because there's some feeling that donor advised funds are just being used to warehouse money for donors who make gifts, but the dollars never actually make it to the end charity. So that's a legitimate concern, and there's actually been some conversation within legislative circles about requiring some payouts from donor advised funds, but we don't have that at this point.
Now, Everence, just to clarify, Everence, your organization does offer DAFs. Have you seen, do you have any, I guess there's not a lot of time has evolved or lapsed yet to really get a sense of, how many, I'm thinking, changing the subject a little bit, but are donors making charities beneficiaries of those DAFs? But I guess it's probably not enough time yet to really have any data on that.
Well, we've worked with donor advised funds for many years. We are an organization that, for most of our donors, they have a plan for the dollars that are coming in. They're not typically just kind of putting it in as a warehousing kind of tool. So they've got a plan, and we work with them to make that plan. And as an alternative to family foundations or a private foundation, this is a really powerful tool to think about how do we involve our children in our giving, so you can have family giving together with donor advised funds. We have some folks thinking about their testamentary plans, their plans that through their will, their estate planning, to leave dollars into a donor advised fund, that there can be a giving even after they've passed, and inviting family members to be a part of that. So we've seen people being willing to give and wanting to give, being excited about having those dollars. Again, for development professionals, I would say, if you are receiving gifts from a donor advised fund, and you'll oftentimes be able to recognize that because it's going to come from an Everence foundation, and on the check stub it'll say something like, this is coming from the giving fund of Mr. and Mrs. Jones. If you're receiving those dollars from a donor advised fund, I would pay a lot of attention to that. I would flag that in your CRM system, because what that donor, you can assume about that donor is they've already taken the first step. They've already taken the first step in saying, we're in the plan giving pool. We're swimming in this pool already, even if we're just wading up to our knees. But they're involved. You can also think about what else is in that donor advised fund. There may be gifts that they are waiting to designate. Donors have made the gift already into that donor advised fund. They've received the tax benefit of making the gift, and they may have some dollars that are there, and they're simply waiting to say, here's the charity that I want to distribute these to. So it's an indicator to you that there may be more resources that they have available to be able to bless your charity.
And of course, they can potentially make us a beneficiary.
Absolutely.
Of that fund upon their passing. Yeah.
Yep. So
I always recommend that they go to their finance or department or whoever's bringing in the checks to say, can you just send me a report? And I know that, and I want to ask you if Everence does it. I know that with other folks, you could actually call them and say, can you send me a list of any of your donor advised fund holders who have made a donation to our charity? And I've done that in the past with organizations where they just haven't kept good records in the past and wanted to clean all that up. Would somebody be able to do that with your funds as well, a client? With the donor advised fund, we typically would see that as that's a donor owned account. So those would be information we would hold a little bit closer. Okay.
We may, if you're asking about a specific gift that you received a check, it's like, hey, I've got a check for $1,000 last year, and we didn't designate where that was coming from. Yeah, certainly I would be able to tell you who that was.
Great. Cool.
Yeah.
Great. Good stuff. Any other takeaways as we wrap up here?
Well, I think too, from a donor professionals or a development professional standpoint, donor advised funds can be sort of your back office resource in some ways to do the heavy lift for gifts of appreciated stock or assets. Your organization may not be set up to receive those. Donor advised funds can do that for you. They can kind of serve in that way, and you don't need to set up the internal systems within your own organization. You can use the systems that foundations that have donor advised funds set up have in place there. So if you have questions on any of that stuff, reach out to your foundation representative who you work with. If you don't have one, give me a call. I'd be happy to talk to you. I work here in Eastern Pennsylvania, but our Everence serves a national audience, so we're always happy to help.
And how can people get in touch with you, Randy?
You can get me at randy.nyce, and I throw a little trick in there because Nyce is spelled N-Y-C-E, randy.nyce at everence.com, and Everence is spelled with all E's, EVERENCE.com. Or if you use the phone still, you can call me at 215-703-0111.
You mean the camera and the social media platform?
Yes.
Device.
Yes, exactly. We'll zoom.
Right.
Some zooming.
Yeah. Randy, thank you as always.
Always a pleasure. And just remember, Joe, you can do it.
You can do it. Thank you.